Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 6 wide receiver rankings for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my top 32 ranked wide receivers of the week, as well as explaining why I have them ranked at each and every single spot inside the top 32. But before we get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy football championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure to hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I would also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me on there, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. The link to my Twitter is also down below in the video description. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 6 wide receiver rankings. We begin at number 1 with Devante Adams, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Now, there are a couple of players at every single position where, to me, it doesn't matter at all what the matchup is for them. Devante Adams could be going up against the best defense in the NFL, and I would probably still have him ranked inside the top 5 because he is just that good. The Green Bay Packers offense is that good. Aaron Rodgers throws the ball just so much to Devante Adams that he could overcome really any matchup. This week, going up against the Chicago Bears is not going to be this very tall Mount Everest-esque mountain to climb, because the Chicago Bears defense is kind of on a downturn. They're kind of a shell of themselves from the last couple of years. Now, does that mean that the Bears defense is a complete and utter dumpster fire and they're not going to be able to do anything up against the Green Bay Packers? Of course not. They still have a pretty solid defense. All I'm saying is that they're not the same Chicago Bears defense from the last couple of years that everyone referred to as one of the best defenses in the National Football League. If not a couple of years ago, the best defense in the NFL. Devante Adams here is in for a very solid spot. He just gets fed the ball so often by Aaron Rodgers game in and game out that you just have to rely on him as one of the top receivers in fantasy football. And this week, I got him ranked at number 1. At number 2, we have Stefan Diggs, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills, going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. Now, I like Stefan Diggs' matchup much better than Devante Adams, but Devante Adams has kind of played well all season long, right? He hasn't really had that down game. I understand in week number 1, he didn't put up Devante Adams numbers, but he wasn't really taking a shit in your lineup. And neither has Stefan Diggs, but Stefan Diggs hasn't had a big game. He hasn't had that huge game that we've came accustomed to with Stefan Diggs in a Buffalo Bills uniform. In Minnesota, things were kind of up and down. He would have some down games, but last year in Buffalo, basically every single game he was running train on defense, and that has on the defenses, and that has not been the case at all really this season. And that's honestly because Josh Allen isn't just force-feeding the ball to Stefan Diggs. He's throwing the ball elsewhere. He's throwing it to Emanuel Sanders. He's throwing the ball to Dawson Knox a lot in the end zone, and that is leading to Stefan Diggs having kind of a downward spiral from last season. Now, do I expect Stefan Diggs to continue to not necessarily shit the bed for your lineup, but not play all that well? No, probably not. This week, he gets the Tennessee Titans. If there was ever a game for Stefan Diggs to kind of break free of how he's been playing the last couple of weeks of the season, it would be this week up against a not-so-hot Tennessee Titans defense. At number 3, we have Tyreke Hill, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the Washington football team in Washington. I love this matchup because I feel as though the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be in a firefight with the Washington football team. Both of these defenses suck absolute donkey hog up against the pass, so you would expect this to be a very heavy passing affair between the Chiefs and the Washington football team. Now, the question here doesn't have to do with the game script, because I believe that the Chiefs and the Washington football team are going to be throwing the ball a ton. What does worry me a little bit is the injury reports, talking about how Tyreek Hill isn't 100% healthy, and something tells me that maybe there's a chance that Tyreek Hill does go in this game, he does play, and he's just kind of utilized as a decoy, and you still have to cover the decoy version of Tyreek Hill, because even if he isn't 100%, at 60%, he could still dust a DB if the DB isn't really paying attention because they think that Tyreek Hill is a decoy, and that does worry me immensely. Now, do I think 100% that he is going to be a decoy in this game? No, but it is something that I want to talk about because it is something that I've worried about a little bit. At number 4, we have Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams going up against the New York Football Giants in New York. In this game, I love Cooper Kupp. I started thinking about it a little bit more. While I like Robert Woods a ton on this week, and while Robert Woods had that kind of coming out game last week, because the first couple of weeks, Robert Woods wasn't bad, but he wasn't the same Robert Woods from last season. People were starting to say that they miss the old Robert Woods. And I agreed because, hey, why is Matthew Stafford, who is arguably, not even arguably, who is by fact a much better quarterback than Jared Goff, why is he not throwing the fucking football to one of the best receivers on the field? Maybe you think Cooper Kupp's better, maybe you think Robert Woods better, but regardless, Robert Woods should still be seeing the football a lot in these games. And for some reason, he just wasn't. But then last week, they started giving him the ball. Sean McVay talked it up all week. Hey, we're going to feed Robert Woods, and that was the case. So this week, going up against the Giants, I expect them to give the ball a decent amount to both of them. And going up against the Giants, I think Cooper Kupp has the potential to be the number one wide receiver on the week. He does still appear, at least in my opinion, to be the number one target for Matthew Stafford in this Rams offense. At number 5, we have Justin Jefferson, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings, going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Now, I see a lot of people talking about how they believe this is going to be a closer game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Carolina Panthers, that they're talking about that this is going to be a lower scoring game. In my opinion, I think this is going to be a much higher scoring game than the Minnesota Vikings have been playing over the last couple of weeks. I think that Justin Jefferson has looked good even in the lower scoring games. So if this does go and start to become more of a shootout between Kirk Cousins and Mono Man Sam Darnold in Carolina, then maybe, just maybe, Justin Jefferson has the potential to be a top 5 guy because the score keeps on rising. I love Justin Jefferson this week as my wide receiver number 5. At number 6, we have Jamar Chase, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Detroit Lions this week in Detroit. Very interesting. We got 2 LSU wide receivers back-to-back, Michael Jordan, 96-97, but Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's connection is unreal. They have that fucking 5G LTE type of connection with each other, and Jamar Chase has just been eating. He scores a touchdown in basically every single week, and this game up against the Detroit Lions, there's a very high chance that he finds his way into the end zone yet again. I love Jamar Chase in this game. I think the Cincinnati Bengals could blow the door out of the Detroit Lions, and Jamar Chase could put up potentially his biggest showing of the season. At number 7, we have DJ Moore, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I understand that DJ Moore was an immense disappointment last week, but I don't want you guys to just pivot away from DJ Moore because of one bad game, because the rest of the season, DJ Moore has been like a top 5, top 10 wide receiver every single fucking week, and he has one down game, so I don't want you guys to just think about last week. Think about the whole season as a whole. Last week was also by far and away Sam Darnold's worst game, so if Mono Man Sam is able to get back on track, which I believe he will up against this Vikings defense, you better expect that DJ Moore could have a huge spot this week at number 7. At number 8, we have scary F1 Terry McLaurin, wide receiver of the Washington football team, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Just like with Tyreek Hill, Terry McLaurin is another wide receiver where you want to monitor his health right now. Now, my personal assumption is that Terry McLaurin ends up playing, just like I believe that Tyreek Hill ends up playing, but again, make sure you monitor that. Again, I do believe this is going to be a very high-scoring back-and-forth affair between these two teams, and that will lead to Terry McLaurin getting an ass load of points, so I expect Terry McLaurin to have a huge week. At number 9, we have Mike Williams, wide receiver of the LA Chargers, going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. Now, a lot of people were quick to dismiss Mike Williams after he put up a snooze of a game on his birthday, no less, on, what was that, Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago during that Lightning game delay. And then people were like, oh, fuck, man. Maybe Mike Williams is done for. Maybe it was just 4 games of greatness, and then he was just going to fade away, drift away into the ocean, and not do anything for the rest of the season. Now, that was a stupid take because, obviously, he is still the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver on one of the best offenses in the National Football League, in the LA Chargers, with one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, with Justin Herbert the pervert. So, obviously, you're going to fire up Mike Williams. I expect Mike Williams to have an excellent showing this week up against the Ravens in what could be a very high-scoring back-and-forth affair. At number 10, we have DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals, going up against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. Now, I like D-Hop, but I had to move him down my rankings because Cliff Kingsbury has COVID, and the head coach of your team not being there is typically pretty worrisome, in my opinion. Like, I still think that the Arizona Cardinals could win this game, but I also am not 100% sure that they will look exactly the same. Well, I know for a fact they're not going to look exactly the same without Cliff Kingsbury. So that is pretty worrisome for me. DeAndre Hopkins, he's still fucking DeAndre Hopkins. He's still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but I just want to kind of put it out there that maybe this game doesn't go 100% the way that you thought it would because Cliff Kingsbury is not out there to be the head coach. He's going to be watching from home in that cool-ass setup where he chills. He had like the fire pit out there. If you guys watched the NFL draft, what was that, last last year or the year before that, he's chilling. I think it was 2020. He's chilling at home. He has this nice couch. He's got this nice house, so he'll be fine. He'll be nice and cozy at home, but it does suck, obviously, for the Arizona Cardinals because not having your head coach, that's pretty worrisome. So before we move on into wide receivers 11 through 20, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, make sure you hit that like button down below as well. I would appreciate it a ton. At number 11, we have Deontay Johnson, wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the Seattle Seahawks. And at number 12, we have DK Metcalf, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. This game, Sunday Night Football, obviously going to be relatively fun, but it does suck that Geno Smith is going to be the starting quarterback, not Russell Wilson. How does that affect this game? To me, for DK Metcalf, who's the number 12 ranked wide receiver, it seemed like Geno Smith fell a liking to throwing the ball to DK Metcalf repeatedly. And if that is the case again, which I believe it will be, then DK Metcalf is going to have the potential to finish inside of the top 5 at the wide receiver position, even if Russell Wilson is not there. If they continue to force feed DK Metcalf, then obviously the guy is going to be productive, so I like him as my wide receiver number 12, but this is a tougher defensive matchup, which does worry me a little bit. Because if they were playing up against, like, the Texans or something, even with Geno Smith, DK Metcalf would be ranked as, like, a top 5 wide receiver. At number 11, like I said, we got Deontay Johnson. Big Ben actually looked really good last week, so maybe Big Ben has kind of turned the page on the season of being, like, not looking that great, right? Juju Smith-Schuster, Mr. Corvette, ends up getting hurt, but that doesn't really have too much of an effect on Deontay Johnson. He was already the clear number 1 wide receiver in targets for the team. They're going up against a bad Seattle Seahawks defense, so I expect Big Ben to look good in this game. I expect Deontay Johnson to put up a very solid game here in week number 6 up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 13, we have Keenan Allen, wide receiver of the LA Chargers, going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. While Mike Williams is getting a lot of the shine, reasonably so, he has looked really good this season. At the end of the day, you still have to give some credit to Keenan Allen because he's still out there, he's still getting the football, and if this is going to be a high-scoring, back-and-forth, rock'em sock'em fucking robots affair, just punching, no blocking, then you better expect Keenan Allen to be in for a humongous spot up against the Baltimore Ravens, and like what I said, could be one of the highest-scoring games of the week, if not the highest-scoring game of the week. I love Keenan Allen every single week. He's super safe, and he has the upside to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 wide receiver up against the Ravens. At number 14, we have CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the New England Deflatriots in New England. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, those are just 2 wide receivers that you have to play every single week and you have to rank relatively highly because there are going to be games where the Dallas Cowboys throw 5 fucking touchdowns. There's going to be games where Dak lays it on the defense. CeeDee Lamb could score literally 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns. Same thing goes with Amari Cooper. So you have to rank them high every single week because of how potent this Dallas Cowboys offense is. Now, there's going to be games where Zeke runs his way on into the end zone twice, and maybe Tony Pollard scores, and then maybe Dalton Schultz scores the lone passing touchdown, right? And then you're kind of pissed off. But at the end of the day, this is still one of the best offenses in the NFL. This is an offense that I expect to be throwing the ball, so I expect CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper to play quite well. We will be talking about Amari Cooper in a little bit, but it is kind of smart to mention them in the same breath because they are just so close in my rankings. Every single week, it's basically a coin flip between CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. It's very similar to how the Bucs offense is kind of a coin flip between one of those guys kind of being the odd man out of of Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown. It's a very similar thing there with the Dallas Cowboys. Number 15, we have Hollywood Brown, wide receiver of the Baltimore Ravens, going up against the LA Chargers. Now, speaking of the Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles who played on Thursday night, they are not in this video because they already played, and I do not want to talk about players that have already played because to me, that's a little bit stupid. You guys are trying to set your lineups for the games that haven't happened yet, so to me, there's no real reason to talk about the guys who have already played because they already played, and you can't just magically move them into your lineup now after they ended up playing. Hollywood Brown is a guy that I love this week. I love him every single week. This guy has proved me completely wrong, and I've admitted it multiple times. Hollywood Brown was a guy for the last 2 years of his NFL career. This guy has been a complete and utter inconsistent mess. He'd have a game where he drops 35 points, and I know that he can do that. I talked about it all offseason, that he's a guy that's going to have like 2-3 big games, and the rest of the games, he's going to be taking a fucking nap in your lineup. But this season, the inconsistency went away. He had one down game up against the Lions, but that's it, where he dropped 2 easy touchdowns. Had he not have dropped those 2 easy touchdowns, then he would have no inconsistent games. This guy's been the definition of consistency all year long, and I expect that to keep on trucking this week up against the LA Chargers. At 16 again, we have Amari Cooper. Very similar explanation to what I gave with CeeDee Lamb. Any given week, this guy can win you your week. He can win you your matchup because the Dallas Cowboys put the pedal to the metal and stomp all over a New England Patriots team, any given team, any given week. I love Amari Cooper this week, wide receiver 16. Number 17, we have Bobby Trees, wide receiver of the LA Rams, going up against the New York Football Giants in New York. In this game, Robert Woods is my wide receiver 17 because, again, I still feel as though Matthew Stafford likes throwing the ball more to Cooper Kupp. Does that mean that Robert Woods is going to be terrible this week? Of course not. But what it does mean is that his upside is limited when maybe the game plan isn't just to feed Robert Woods like it was last week. At number 18, we have Cortland Sutton, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos, going up against the Las Vegas, turn your volume down, Raiders, going up against the Denver Broncos, obviously. Raiders versus Broncos. Cortland Sutton, the clear number one wide receiver in Denver. Teddy Two Gloves looks solid. The Raiders defense doesn't look that solid. I think that we could be in for a very solid showing from Cortland Sutton, just like he had last week. At number 19, we have Michael Pittman, wide receiver of the Indianapolis Colts, going up against the Houston Texans. This is an absolute smash matchup for Michael Pittman and the Indianapolis Colts. Last week, Michael Pittman made what can only be described as a grown-ass man catch. This dude literally just grabbed the ball like a grown man, fucking snatched that thing while the DB's on him and goes into the end zone. That is what I would describe as a grown man catch. I don't know if you guys watched that game up against the Ravens, but that's what it was to me. Going up against the Texans this week, you saw what Michael Pittman did to the Ravens defense. Imagine what he can do up against a very bad Texans defense. But Nick, the Texans defense looked really good last week up against Mac Jones, McCorkle Jones, and the Patriots. Doesn't that mean Carson Wentz is going to have a bad game? I mean, Carson Wentz looked really good last week. So I think that Michael Pittman should have no struggle destroying the Houston Texans defense. At number 20, we have Mr. T. Higgins, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Detroit Lions. While I like Jamar Chase a lot more, I was also wrong about Jamar Chase, and I'll happily admit it. This motherfucker comes out like days before the season, says he can't see the football, he needs the white NCAA stripes, that's why he can't catch the ball in preseason, he sucks. In training camp, all of the reports that this guy sucks. So you know what I say? I say I don't think this guy's going to be able to do it at the beginning of the first year of his career, right? Thinking maybe it takes some time, maybe halfway through the year he's great, but it's a wash at that point. And guess what? It wasn't a wash. Week number 1, he comes out double pumping these defenses. This guy's fucking amazing. So Jamar Chase is the clear number 1 wide receiver, but Mr. T. Higgins is the number 2. And in some games, he is going to be the alpha, the number 1 wide receiver. And going up against the Detroit Lions, I like my odds that T. Higgins is going to have a very big game. Next up, we got wide receivers 21 through 30. At number 21, we got Cadarius Tony, wide receiver of the New York Football Giants, going up against the LA Rams. Some people are going to worry a little bit about the matchup for Tony, but Tony has just been getting force-fed the ball by the Giants offense. I don't think it matters if Sterling Shepard, if Darius Slayton are back. Nothing that I have seen points towards that they are 100% in just yet. I think that's something we may have to monitor up until Sunday, but even if they do play, it seems like Kadarius Toney has carved out a nice role into that offense using a knife, and he used a knife up against the Dallas Cowboys as he took them to Pound Town. I expect another solid showing from Kadarius Toney. I just worry a little bit about Daniel Jones with that concussion. Obviously, that was tough to see, but Kadarius Toney played well with Mike Glennon as well, so it shouldn't be too much of a worry. At number 22, we have Chase Claypool, wide receiver of the Steelers, going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Chase Claypool looked chef's kiss, magnifique last week in that game. I think he could look good again here this week up against the Seattle Seahawks. Without Juju, it seems like this is just a 2-man funneling machine for Big Ben. I guess a 3-man funneling machine because he still throws the ball a lot to Najee Harris, but Chase Claypool is going to be even more involved now without Mr. Corvette in town, Mr. Juju Smith-Schuster, so that's going to bode much better for Claypool, and I feel pretty reliable, pretty safe with Claypool this week. At number 23, we have Tyler Lockett in my pocket. There's a Lockett in my pocket. Skirt. Wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Now, like I was talking about with DK showed out with Geno Smith in the game, whereas Tyler Lockett kind of took the back seat. Now, does that mean that that's going to happen again in this game? Maybe, maybe not. But if Geno locks on to DK like I believe he will, then I don't think Lockett will have all that great of a showing. And Lockett is kind of an inconsistent wide receiver. At number 24, we have Emanuel Sanders, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills, going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. Are you from Tennessee? Because you're the only tan I see. With that said, Emanuel Sanders has been balling. He's been balling. He scores touchdowns all the time. The Buffalo Bills offense is amazing. If Stefan Diggs has the bounce back game, even if that happens, I think Emanuel Sanders could put up a humongous spot this week up against the Tennessee Titans. The Titans defense is just so shit at defending the pass. I would not be surprised at all if Emanuel Sanders was a top 12 receiver at the end of the week. At number 25, we have A.J. Brown, wide receiver of the Titans, going up against the Buffalo Bills. A.J. Brown was not very involved on a snap share standpoint last week, but he was involved on a majority of the passing plays. I believe it was 88% of the passing plays he was out there for, so he was clearly still banged up last week. But if there was to be a return game, I think you kind of have to move the goalposts a little. You have to push it back a little bit because, well, I think he could have a big game up against the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills defense is the complete opposite of the Titans defense up against the pass. The Titans defense sucks complete and utter cock up against the pass. The Buffalo Bills have one of the best pass defenses in the National Football League. I believe they're ranked number 1 in pass DVOA. So they're going to struggle to pass the ball. They are. So I don't think you can reasonably rank A.J. Brown all that high in your rankings this week. At number 26, we have the man who put up a stinky game last week, Adam Thielen, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings, going up against the Carolina Panthers. If you had Adam Thielen last week, this dude bent you over the table, and he didn't even speak sweet nothings in your ear. He just stuck his cock directly up your team's ass, didn't even bother using any lube, didn't even bother spitting on it before he inserted it deeply inside of you, and it was a traumatic experience for your roster because Adam Thielen destroyed you. But this week, yeah, you just can't expect him to be like that bad again, right? Because that's not what we're used to with Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's also just a fucking touchdown monster. So even if he doesn't have that many receptions, he typically makes up for it by finding his way, waddling his way, waddle, till the very next day, boom, 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 right into the end zone. So if that does end up happening, then you're going to be a lot happier with Adam Thielen. At number 27, we have Jacoby Myers, wide receiver of the New England Patriots, going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Jacoby Myers, look, he's just a safe guy you play in your lineup. He's a guy that's going to be seeing a bunch of targets every single week from the Patriots. It's very unlikely that he gets like 150 yards. It's very unlikely that he finds his way into the end zone because for some reason when the Patriots score, it's either a running back or a tight end. But speaking strictly from a volume standpoint, that warrants Jacoby Myers being ranked inside the top 32. At number 28, we got Brandon Cooks, wide receiver of the Texans, going up against the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts defense absolutely fucking leaned over. They bent over for the Baltimore Ravens in the second half. Then again, that is the Baltimore Ravens offense, and this is the Houston Texans offense we're speaking about. So I'm not too sure they're going to be clicking on all cylinders, but then again, the Colts defense didn't look all that great last week, and the Houston offense looked great up against the Patriots. So maybe we see Brandon Cooks have another solid showing, but it's hard to rank him very high until Mr. Tyrod Taylor ends up coming back. At number 29, we have Tyler, Boyd, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. Tyler Boyd is kind of the odd man out in this offense, and that's why he's ranked much lower than T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. But there is always the chance that Boyd ends up having the big game and maybe T. Higgins or Jamar Chase have the lower scoring game. And up against the Detroit Lions, that becomes even more possible. Now, I believe I did call Tyler Boyd a sit in my start-sit wide receiver video, but I've kind of gotten a little bit warmer on him this week as the week has gone on, and I like him in this game up against the Lions. At number 30, we have Marvin Jones, wide receiver of the Jaguars, going up against the Miami Dolphins in London. Marvin Jones could have a very big game this week. The question is, how does the Dolphins defense play? Because if the Dolphins defense is actually playing for something, right, if the offense is able to stick in the game with Tua Tagovailoa under center, then I don't think Marvin Jones is going to play all that well at all because the Dolphins defense will actually be trying. But then there's also the case where Tua plays like shit, the Dolphins defense goes to sleep at half, and Marvin Jones pounds them softly into the nighttime. So he is still the number 1 wide receiver on the Jaguars, so you can still start him, but I don't love him this week. Now on to wide receivers 31 through 32 to close out the video. At 31, we got Hunter Renfro of the Raiders going up against the Broncos, and at 32, we got Allen Robinson of the Bears going up against the Packers. With such little games this week and with how many wide receivers I wanted to start on the Thursday Night Football game, Allen Robinson makes his way into the top 32, but unless you are down tremendous at wide receiver, please do not play Allen Robinson. Please do not play Allen Robinson because the Bears just do not throw the ball enough. Even with all the injuries to the running back position, even with Damian Harris on the COVID IR, they're still going to try to run the ball a million times with Khalil Herbert the pervert, okay? So understand that Khalil Herbert could still be a big detriment to this passing offense. So sit down, Allen Robinson. He is wide receiver 32 because if he catches like 5 passes, you never know. He is still one of the better wide receivers in the NFL, so he could take that for like 100 yards, but we have yet to see that this season. 31, Hunter Renfro of the Raiders going up against the Broncos. Hunter Renfro has just been the definition of consistency. When the Raiders are winning, he's great. When the Raiders have been losing the last couple of games, he's been great. He's a very consistent piece. He's a big part of this offense for the Raiders, so I expect him to have a solid showing, but it is a tougher matchup up against the Denver Broncos defense. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new or not, make sure to hit that like button down below. I love each and every single one of you guys. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, goodbye.